All right. It's Thursday night.
It is Thursday night.
What happens on Thursday night at this radio station?
Some wild stuff happens here on Thursday night here
Really?
at the W10. We have Go Yard.
Go Yard means hitting a home run, and it's baseball season.
Yes, it is.
It has come back. Yay. Well, aren't we excited?
Yes. Yes, of course.
Yes, of course.
Of
we
course.
are very excited. I'm Mama Macro. Who are you?
You never know who I am. I'm
I
Dr.
don't.
Angel.
But you look familiar.
I'm glad I look familiar to you.
Keep sitting in that same chair, so you must be the
Yeah,
same.
I do keep
The same
coming
person
here.
you were last week, right? Oh, sometimes it's just whack time around here.
Sometimes you have to get, break
little
loose and be a little silly.
What is the show all about? Is there anything to be silly about?
Well, this show is all about learning to hit those home runs in life. And, not just exist, but to live well.
Right.
Yeah.
So, in other words, to get your stuff together.
Yeah. You know what? And have a little fun doing it.
Oh. Okay. And you're Dr. Angel, right? You didn't identify yourself. Maybe you forgot again.
I did identify
you
myself.
did.
I am Dr. Angel.
Yeah, PhD, licensed mental health counselor, and 14 other degrees. That's who you are. Yes.
That is me in the flesh.
Yes, it is you in the flesh. 7 years we've been doing this show. Aren't you getting tired of hanging out with me? Don't answer that.
Yeah, no, we are being recorded, so
don't answer that. Be nice. Be nice. What are these shows all about? What are we doing now tonight? I don't know. You haven't told me what we're doing. So.
We're walking in blindly. No,
Yes.
we are not.
No, we're not.
Tonight's show is all about codependency and codependent thinking and ways to identify it and ways to. It's going to be a little series because it's a lot we're going to cover.
Serious?
A little series.
I'm sorry I came to this show. I think that for years I had no idea what codependency was.
I think a lot of people.
I heard the term, but I never bothered to ask what it was.
I think a lot of people really aren't quite sure what it is.
Yeah.
And they're stuck. They're just feeling like they're hitting the head with their relationships,
Yeah.
kind of like hitting the wall, and they
Right.
don't know what's happening. A lot of time there's codependency under some of that.
Exactly. We're going to define it in a little while. We're glad you're with us. We are up on Facebook right now. You can go there now and add your comments.
You can go to Facebook and add your comments.
Yeah, or questions. Yeah. This show is all about helping people live better, right? And think better and get their priorities straightened out. And we've done almost 7 years of shows. So there's every topic, you name it, we've done it, right?
Sure.
We might as well quit.
Huh?
We might as well quit. Haven't we covered all of them?
We have covered a lot
list?
of topics in 7 years.
No, I'm teasing. We enjoy doing it, but it is because there's so many people that are mired down with all kinds of personal problems, psychological issues, relationship problems. And we just have a format here for the next up until 6 o'clock here or 7 o'clock where you can call in. There's the number 727-441-3000. You can put something right here on our live Facebook right now with questions, and that's a great way to communicate with us. Why would they want to do that? Why would they want to take advantage of asking questions or whatever, knowing that we may not know the answer?
Well, you speak for yourself. No, Jesus.
It's
a great way to be interactive and get some personal questions answered or make a comment or add to the show. So.
Yeah, exactly. So, feel free to do that on Facebook right now. So, we have tons of shows here on tantalknetwork.com. That's the website here at the radio station. You just go to that website, go down to podcasts and look for Go Yard, which is the name of the show. And there'll be tons of shows there.
There are a lot of shows.
And on our website. GoYard2014.org. But those have titles on the website.
They do.
They're just not current right now, but that's okay. We've just been too busy to do that.
We have been quite busy.
Yeah. You work? Do you work?
I do. I have been working a little bit.
What do you do for a living? What do you do?
I have my own mental health practice right here in Clearwater, Florida.
You do?
I do.
How long have you been doing that?
This practice will be celebrating 2 years in May.
That's crazy. Yeah.
I know
It's
we
really
have
good.
another full-time counselor, Rachel, and she's doing great.
No, your practice is doing very well. And you can call 727-501-6557 for an appointment. Oh, go to drangelsdevelopment.org, and you're going to hear your lengthy commercial in just a little while, right?
It is .com, but yeah, drangelsdevelopment.com.
Oh, it is .com, right. We will, all my information will be there, right?
It'll give you a nap time.
It will. That's usually when I take my nap during the show. So, okay, let's talk about why people are dependent, and what does it mean to be codependent, and what does it mean to be dependent, and is everybody dependent?
Ooh, that's a great question. You always go for these all-encompassing absolute words. Is everybody or
I know
no
you
one.
Don't like the word everybody.
I do not like the word everyone because everyone isn't anything.
Always. You don't like the word always.
I do not.
Why? Because there are exceptions to every rule.
There are exceptions to every rule. And so, no, everyone is not dependent.
Uh-oh. Good news, folks.
That's very good news.
Have you ever known anybody that's broken the habit of codependency?
Oh, many people can break this habit. It takes some time, and it takes a lot of retraining and thinking in new ways of relationship patterns, but it totally can be done.
Don't you think it takes a lot of just knowledge, being acquainted with the subject? Because until I started really researching it, which is many, many years ago, but I really had no concept of what it meant. I heard the term kicked around. I said that earlier. It was you hear that term, but until you really get down to the nitty gritty of what it means for your everyday life, people can say the term and not even understand it.
Oh, that happens all the time.
Why is that?
People, they hear terms and they kind of might hear it used in a way, and they kind of generalize that term and or take a little bit of information and kind of expand on it, watch a YouTube show that may or may not be accurate or detailed, and then kind of see how that applies to them. So they don't really have a full understanding. I can't tell you how many times people walk in my office who've watched a YouTube show on mental health and think they have this diagnosis
for themselves. Yeah.
And I'm like, if YouTube could do this, I would not have to have gone to college for 16 years to get all the information detail that we have. So it's a lot more complicated than what we hear.
You went to college for 16 years?
I sure did.
Slow learner, right? Okay, so it is more complicated, isn't it?
It sure is.
Okay, so dependent means you have to rely on someone else, right?
Sure, like a child. A child is a dependent of an adult, right?
Sure.
They are relying on that person for their physical needs, their emotional needs, their needs to be met.
Right. Okay. So if you're codependent?
So when we're codependent, that is the unhealthy relationship dynamic where one person is focused on taking care of another person, fixing them, controlling them, but pretty much kind of taking over their life in some way.
Fixing them and controlling them.
Mm-hmm. And they usually do it to the extent where it gives the person their identity. I need to be needed. That's a codependency type thing. So I'm taking care of someone because it makes me feel like I am valuable, I am lovable, I am worthwhile.
And so the person that's being codependent needs to be fixing someone else?
Oh, yeah. They like to have projects.
Okay. They like projects.
We call those projects, yes.
Okay.
And they usually do so at the sacrifice of their own needs and wants.
Aha. So would this be rooted a lot of times in fear of being alone, perhaps?
Sure.
What other fears?
This can be rooted in a lot of stuff. A lot of times this is rooted from stuff that happens earlier in our life.
Trauma, childhood trauma.
Totally, trauma can be it. It could be being told you're unlovable or being told that you're not as good as someone else.
Right.
And that can be someone using those words, or it could just be the way you felt in your
as a child
house.
growing up. Right.
People who are criticized, they feel, they come from critical families. They're definitely can fall into this.
Okay, explain that to our listeners. So somebody grows up in a family where they are criticized all the time. How does that make them codependent?
Because they are constantly feeling like what they are doing isn't good enough. It's not worthwhile. It's not valuable. And so they start to find value in helping other people.
Oh, okay. So they can fix somebody else or help somebody else because they have not been...
They're a lost cause, right? Kind of in their mind.
They are a lost cause?
They kind of feel that way. And so a lot of times like that harsh critical environment, like that bar is always changing. Like you're criticized because you're not cleaning your room right, and then they learn to clean the room right, and now it's like, oh well, you used those pillows on your bed. Like there's always something wrong with what they're doing.
Okay. So how does a person begin to see these characteristics in themselves?
Ooh, well, usually one of the best ways we can start seeing these characteristics is by flashing a light on the quality of your relationships.
Do you want to explain that a little bit more? Is this a flashlight or what? No, just
kind of
explain
looking
that. What do you mean?
Sure, like looking back at the quality of our relationships in our life. Like, are we feeling like, are they healthy? Are they give and take? Is there this mutual? Is the other person there for me as much as I'm there for them? Do we have balance?
Okay, so back up a minute. The person who's codependent, it could be both people, correct?
Oh, yes, it can be both people.
Yeah, that makes it more complicated. But let's just say it's one person's codependent on the other. Mm-hmm. And how does that make the person feel who's being codependent upon? Did you follow all that?
I think I'm following you. So we're talking the person who
is the recipient of the codependency.
Sure. How do they feel?
Do they feel? Do they want this?
Well,
do they want their focus, that person's focus, all totally on them?
Sometimes they do in the beginning a lot of times. So
right.
It might
I think
come.
So too.
But remember now, the codependent person who's initiating the behavior, it's about, kind of getting over involved in someone's life, which will include doing things that enable bad behavior.
Okay.
So
why does it have to be bad behavior?
This person to be dependent on me. It doesn't always have to enable bad behavior, but for example, like a parent can be very codependent with their child, and I see this a lot with adult kids.
Okay.
And so the parent, allows the kid to sit in the basement, so to speak, and play video games all day, but still have, adult privileges and stuff because they're still living in the home, and so this parent can be codependent with this child if the child
they don't want to cross the teenager or the young adult, and they don't want to cause a problem.
No,
they
don't want to hold them accountable for becoming an adult, because then they're going to move out and they're not going to have that control over that person.
There you go. Okay. Is that common?
Oh, that happens a lot.
Very common, isn't it? Especially with adult children that are still living at home, that have failure to launch. We've talked about that.
Yeah, a lot of failure to launch is definitely rooted in unhealthy relationship cycles between the parent and the child.
Okay, so the parent is going, okay, you can't pay that bill, I'll pay that bill.
Yep.
You can't, that job didn't work out, well, poor baby.
Yes, they do. And even if I'm even seeing this with the young adults when they've moved out with and have their own apartment, the parents still may be paying the rent for them and paying a lot of their stuff, which makes that young adult very dependent on that parent. So there's that element of control that can happen, because remember, codependency can have that control.
Absolutely. Or the parent that goes over and cleans the young man's house or apartment because mom just knows he's not going to do it himself.
Sure. And so she is hurting him from learning to grow and develop as an adult and take care of his own space, so to speak.
It's a lot of when it's a parent over a older child like that, a child that's actually a young adult and just not living on their own. Is that a thing of control, or is that a thing of fear that they can't make it on their own without the parent?
Well, it's part of codependency, because it doesn't matter if and it could be rooted in a fear, but a lot of time it's rooted in this child doesn't need me anymore. Where's my value?
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
So they want this, like I've heard stories in the last few weeks from some of my adult patients where their parent came over to visit them. Now they're in their own apartment paying their own bills. Their parent came to visit them and started going through their drawers and deciding, looking for, going through their rooms and deciding this wasn't clean enough, or you didn't take care of this right, and like trying to control that adult person's environment. And the adult person came to me and she's like, Dr. Angel, she goes, that didn't feel good. I'm like, that's not okay. That's codependency.
Okay, how did it feel to that person?
She felt violated.
Okay.
And so that's when we talked about how we have that conversation and set those boundaries for her space. But
Don't you think it's hard for a lot of parents to let go of kids that maybe have lived longer than 18 years under their roof? Maybe they've been there for a few more years in adulthood and then they finally get into a relationship with someone. That can cause a lot of problems with a codependent parent,
Yes,
right?
it can, because that person's now the enemy. They're in competition for that person's time.
Right.
And yes.
Yeah. So for the victim of the codependency, does resentment result quite a bit in this if they feel that that somebody is trying to put their claws of control?
Once they start to see it, like they'll start feeling it, but there's usually a payoff in it for them.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So
mom's doing the laundry.
There's some kind of payoff in it.
Right.
But
mom's got dinner on the table when I get home from work.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
But mom doesn't live here. Yeah.
Correct. Right. So there's usually like that benefit for them. So once they start like working on becoming healthy, they start to see it. They feel very violated in that codependency.
Oh, piece. Okay. All right. The child or whoever it is.
Yeah. They start it like it almost makes them feel feelings of not just resentment, but almost like disgust toward that person.
Whoa. Yeah. Okay. So a relationship where let's go back to a, spouse or partners or boyfriend, girlfriend living together, whatever. And one of them is codependent and the other one is not. What kind of problems?
Well, we're going to have lots of problems because the codependent person does not have very healthy boundaries, because that's part of being codependent, is that our boundaries are very skewed. So they're going to be the person who is drawn to whoever they're becoming codependent with. So you might have a partner who's codependent, but you might not be the recipient of that. It might be other friends or other family members too.
Okay.
So they may be dropping plans with you to go run and take care of this other person's emergency constantly. Okay. Or emotionally unavailable for you. Or so there's going to be a lot of boundary violations.
So the young person that moves in with his girlfriend, but he's still very codependent on his mom and dad, and they are on him. Mm-hmm. That's going to cause a problem in the new relationship. For sure.
Absolutely. Because as we move forward into those romantic relationships, like we are supposed to become a unit with our primary partner in life. And what happens is that child stays a unit with his family of origin.
Right.
And everything, the alliance goes to the parent and not to the partner, which usually causes those relationships to fall apart.
Exactly. Is this common?
It's more common than you think.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So what happens when a therapist or somebody points out to the person, wait a minute, that your mom is codependent on you, and this is causing your problem?
Sure.
How is that received? Is it noticed? Do they pay attention? Do they believe it?
Well, usually when we're starting to see those dynamics rise up, I mean, I wouldn't put it in those terms. We would start looking at boundaries first, because usually that's where we're going to see the biggest highlight. Like we have a person who has very non-defined boundaries or lacking boundaries. We're going to start doing some boundary work. And as we're working on that, then we can start looking through where codependent behaviors are coming through. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Because when you start accusing the person, like, oh, by the way, they're codependent.
Yeah, they're going to get defensive.
They're going to get defensive. And that's not the goal. The goal is to educate. The goal is to highlight what's going on, but also highlight what healthy looks like in the process.
Okay. What does healthy look like?
Well, healthy looks like having balanced relationships, having good defined boundaries, having, we are an independent person who gets to take independent choices for ourselves. Other people in our world may not like those choices, but they don't get to control those choices. When we're in a healthy relationship, we give, we receive, we have our needs met.
Right.
We feel complete.
So let's go back to teenage years, for example, before we get to the break here. A teenager who's trying to spread their wings and fly, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, and that's tough. And they're just beginning to be out with their friends and not want to spend evenings with the parents, or not wanting to go on vacation, for instance, with the parents, or whatever the case may be. How hard is that for the codependent parent to let go? Is this really, really painful?
It is very painful because it's almost this feeling of, I mean, it's totally a feeling of rejection, and it's starting to, they lose their value. So like they might start
Okay.
falling apart. So
Yeah.
I actually have I'm working with a case that this very thing is happening, and the parent can't handle this, feels like now I'm not needed, I'm not wanted, I'm not
Yes.
loved, I'm not
Yes.
valuable. And like she started getting into alcohol to cover those feelings. So like she wasn't able to sit in with that, and so it started taking her down another negative slippery slope
Yeah, just because she could not cope with the
because she
fact
could
that
not
she was no
cope.
longer needed.
Mhm.
So that's a big part of codependency, isn't it? Feeling needed and
Mhm.
feeling wanted,
And you
and your
only feel
opinion value is valuable. And
right. So, and you really, for these people, they typically only feel valued when they're doing things for other people.
that's a good place to start after the break. They only feel valuable when they're doing things for other people. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. You can call a friend and say, "Why don't you listen to Go Yard tonight? It's a good topic."
Obeys. Tan Talk. Entertaining and informative radio for the Sunshine State.
Prompt professional service is what you will receive when you allow Marcia McAllister of Charles Rittenberg Realty to help find that perfect home or list your home for sale. With over 23 years of experience in the Tampa Bay area, you will enjoy a smooth transaction from start to finish. Call Marcia today at 727-417-0707. Now is a great time to buy or sell a home. Call Marcia McAllister at 727-417-0707.
Dr. Angel Falzoni specializes in a variety of therapeutic areas including trauma, depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, stress management, self-esteem, interpersonal relationships, ADHD, behavioral addictions, as well as spirituality issues. A Florida native, she holds multiple degrees, including a bachelor's in education and philosophy, a master's of arts in professional counseling and marriage and family therapy, and a PhD in psychology. Dr. Angel is also a Florida licensed mental health counselor. She has worked with youth and adolescents for 14 plus years and has worked extensively in women's mental health for the past 6 years. She has worked in agencies providing mental health services to family and youth at high risk. Dr. Angel is an accomplished psychotherapist who works with children, teens, adults, couples, and families. Dr. Angel has advanced training and experience in working with LGBTQ-specific individuals and issues. Dr. Angel can help you. Just call for an appointment at 727-501-6557 or online at drangelsdevelopment.com. Dr. Angel Falzoni, support for individuals, couples, and families. 727-501-6557.
This is the Tan Talk Radio.
Nap time is
long.
over.
Yeah. How can you have 15 degrees? How can you? How do you do that? You said you'd only been going to school for 16 years after.
Yeah, no, it's not 15 degrees.
It's close, though. But you know what? You have been very persistent in your education because you've had a dream. You've had a goal.
Yes, I have.
And I think a lot of people, I like to tease you about that just because you are rather accomplished. And that's something to make fun of, actually, but no. No, but seriously, a lot of people can't stay focused. I think this is one thing we want to talk about tonight with codependency, is that when we are focused on one person and how they're treating us or how they're interacting with us, it really takes our thoughts away from other goals and plans in life, right?
It sure does.
I like to tease you about all your degrees, but really, you couldn't have done that if you weren't focused.
Of course not, right? It took
And you had 3 little boys.
I did. It took laser focus and a lot of prioritizing and a lot of. Yeah.
So even though I make fun of you about that, which I know you always try to get me to apologize, but I'm not going to. But anyway, it's the whole point is that when we are codependent or we're the victim of a codependent relationship, it pulls away from our focus on other things in our life that we're trying to accomplish, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's a real handicap if
It
you're in
is.
a relationship like that.
It sure is. And in fact, in our electronic age of a lot of times people who are codependent, one of the things they like to do is be connected by text or some way.
Oh.
Yes. Constantly to that other person, to the point where I've had many people lose their jobs, get reprimanded at work, not get their tasks done at work because they're more concerned with the person on the other end of the phone constantly.
So, do you remember those old jokes about da-da-da, you might be a redneck?
Yeah.
Remember? So, if you text, feel compelled and driven to text with your significant other basically all day long, even though you're at work, you're carrying on a dialogue, right? You might be codependent.
Yes.
Right?
That is true.
If you are afraid of where they are, what they're doing, you might be codependent.
Yes, you might.
If you cannot get along without hearing their voice, or just absolutely being attached to the hip to that person, you just might be codependent.
Yeah, those are some really great signs.
Not a redneck necessarily.
Yes, but no, those are
right?
Those are definitely some of the signs. I mean, and I see it like in dating relationships.
Oh yeah,
where it can blend a little more because usually in the beginning you do text each other a little bit more, right?
Yeah, right.
But these people are constantly, there are just hundreds of texts in a day and talking on the phone for a long period of time, which is way out of balance. They're not able to live their life because they're so connected in.
Okay, how about the person who's beginning to date someone and they need to hear from that person 3, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 times a day. And if they don't, they feel like, oh, that person's lost interest in me.
Right.
What's wrong with that? That's codependency.
And that means that person's value is wrapped in this person constantly giving them.
Whoa! You just said something very important. Where's my bell? Okay, somebody's value is wrapped up in the other person.
In the other person.
Fulfilling everything they need, right? Don't you think that's huge when it comes to codependency?
It is very huge when it comes to codependency because that value is wrapped up in that other person and a lot of times in their attention or their
attention and what they say to them, about how wonderful they are and all that. They got to hear it all the time.
Or whatever they want to. Yes.
Yes.
Very much so.
And okay, so the person who's in a relationship and maybe they talk once during the day, maybe they don't until evening because they both go to work and whatever, and they're not worried about, they're not insecure. They're just like, how was your day? Great. They're not worried about somebody else hitting on them or things like that. That should be a normal thing.
That should be a normal thing.
But I know whole lots of people, and you do too.
Yes.
That's because you're in practice.
That is because I'm in practice, but
and
you're right.
I know because I just know.
Yes.
Because it is a problem when our value that we feel about ourselves is conditioned on how someone responds to us all day long,
Yes.
or 3 times a day, or 10 times a day.
Sure. Definitely. And so if you're not connected, you're constantly thinking about when are we connecting next? It's consuming.
Why hasn't he called me?
Yes.
Why hasn't he texted me back? Where is he? What's he doing?
And then they automatically start catastrophizing.
Oh,
is he
talked
with
about
somebody
that last
else?
week. Yes.
Does he not like me anymore?
Yes. I bet he's got somebody else on the side.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's true. But
this day and age could be, but yeah.
But the point is, it's that obsession.
Yes.
That's really what it is.
It is an obsession.
What is an obsession? Can you define that, Doctor?
Ooh, an obsession is a thought that you have constantly. So you can't let it go.
Right.
And, keep moving forward. So you kind of go through your day, but you're kind of in robot mode, so to speak. You're not engaged or connected with anyone else because your brain's
where's
over
the
here. Text, or where's the call?
Yeah, and looking at the text all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever been to lunch with somebody and they're constantly looking at their phone?
It's one of my pet peeves.
Is it? That's why I quit going to lunch with you a long time ago.
Yeah, because you just can't put that phone down.
No, I mean you can't. So no, but it is a problem for a lot of people, especially when they're dating. They're in that dating phase, whether it's dating after marriage, broke up, or it's young dating. Their whole world revolves around the attention from that person. And when that person doesn't call for a few hours, they catastrophize.
They not only catastrophize, they fall into deep depression, get very emotional. It's devastating for them. They feel devastated. That's a good word.
Devastated.
They start feeling that way.
But a lot of times it's on speculation.
It's all on speculation. And then as soon as they hear from that person,
they're happy.
The emotions go right back up. Very
right. It's like a sugar high. It's like sugar.
Exactly.
Right. And as soon as they have that sugar high and they're told, yeah, I'm fine. I've just been busy. I had this call, blah, 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 blah. They're okay.
Yes, they are. That is definitely.
What is wrong with that kind of a relationship?
Well, first of all, we can't really go into any healthy relationship when our value is wrapped up in other people.
What they think of us.
Yeah, our value has to come from within us.
Right.
To be able to give into a healthy relationship. Because when it's wrapped in another person, our value is constantly changing, and we're going from feeling worthless to, in the cloud 9.
And if we don't, these type of people, if they're on the dating scene and they don't have that relationship going on, they're looking for that. They're looking for somebody who will do that because it gives them that emotional high that they feel good about themselves.
Right.
Somebody wants me,
And they want to spend a consuming amount of time with that person.
To the point they smother.
Oh, very smothering. Very. In fact, sometimes we kind of relate to them as like the sucker fish.
Oh, yeah. Really? Ugh. Okay. Yeah.
You see those on the side of the
yeah, I know. Right.
Because they do. They get very smothering. They want to spend a lot more time and more time with that person. They typically, if it's a dating thing, they usually go into overnights quickly or move in together quickly. Like it's a very usually fast moving relationship. Yeah. Or they want it to be.
And if it's not being reciprocated and somebody's not proposing in the first month.
Well, that's rejection.
My
value's not there.
Why don't they want to marry me?
What's wrong with me? What am I doing wrong? Yes. It goes into all that those negative thinking traps. It goes right into all
the things we just talked about the last 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. The negative thinking traps. The catastrophizing is really important because people like this, and I've known a lot through my years, but they absolutely go for the worst. It's the worst case scenario. That's what they're believing. What they're thinking.
Yes, they do.
Right?
Yes.
Why is that not healthy?
Well, first of all,
do you have an hour? No, you only have 15 minutes.
It's unhealthy because our emotions go straight into that very horrific place of that catastrophe constantly. Most of the things that we are speculating aren't true, aren't going to happen, and we're constantly putting our emotions as if it's happened. And so we get in tunnel thinking when that happens. We're not stepping back and giving a person a space to be a person and think, oh, maybe they're just busy, or maybe they got tied up at work, or maybe they just want alone time. are so overconsumed with every event and this negative perspective.
Okay, so the codependent person does this. It's just like the suckerfish, right? And
Yes.
just really. So what signal they're sending is I'm so insecure in my own value that I've got to hear from you all the time to build me up. Is that it?
They sure do. And here goes some of the problems too for people who are codependent and are trying to date. We'll stick with this for a minute, is they get taken advantage of so often, time and time again, because that neediness can be spotted a mile away.
How?
Well, they're constantly trying to, talk and connect and get together and
Talking for hours.
Yes. And that neediness is very quickly spotted. A lot of times we'll see they'll dress really, really nice and maybe nicer than what we're going to do. I had a gentleman show up in a suit when they were going to dinner at a Chili's kind of restaurant, not really the suit kind of restaurant, right?
No.
So you'll see a lot of pride in appearance and what they're trying to show. They're very careful and calculated to show their best part, and you can see that a mile away, and then people know that they need my attention to feel valued. So,
but it's almost like a sign. Here's your sign.
It is a sign.
I'm needy. I'm codependent. Fill my void.
Fill my void, and they know they can take advantage of people like that, and they do. They use them for sex. They use them to scam money. They use them for all kinds of stuff.
Right.
And
exactly.
It's devastating to this codependent person who
yeah.
thinks it's all their fault. What did I do? Why wasn't I not enough for this person?
They do take it back to that, don't they?
They sure do.
They feel like it's their fault.
They sure do.
When in essence it is, because
what's their fault is the fact that they made their value dependent on the other person.
Right. And they revealed it, because you can't keep this stuff hidden.
Not
when
at
somebody
all.
is codependent, I'm telling you, audience, I've been around this too much through the years and seen it in people, that when they are really genuinely codependent, it shows all over them. You might as well have a sign on your roof or on your forehead that says, I'm codependent, I'm needy. Come get me.
Well, sure. It
Right?
definitely comes through the over texting, keeping conversations going longer than what they're really going. Yes, very much so.
So the codependent person has a hard time with patience.
True.
And fear.
Fear, because that fear comes in.
I think fear is one of the roots, don't you?
Oh, sure. Well, the fear of I'm not lovable, I'm not valuable, I'm not enough, something's wrong with me, that's what feeds that. Sure.
Right. What about patience? Let's talk about that. How does that affect all this? Because I think it does. Because there's a rush to be serious. There's a rush to, oh my gosh, we're gonna get engaged, and it's like a show on TV. The Bachelor, the Bachelorette. And
yes,
3 weeks of 2 dates, and he wants to marry me. Really?
A lot of times these relationships move way too fast, and I think that comes out of the codependent person's insecurity that if they see the real me, they're not going to like me. So let me keep my best foot forward and, get them,
It occurs to me from people I've known that have been like this a lot. This is a very difficult way to live, because you're constantly having to measure up or go exceed and perform. It's more of a performance.
It is a performance.
It's more of a performance, isn't it?
It's absolutely a performance.
Instead of just relaxing and be who you are.
Exactly. And then you're always going out of your way to do things for that other person.
Yeah.
Buy them things, take care of things for them that's theirs to deal with. You're doing it for them.
Right. Because you want them to really like you.
Sure.
Right? Okay. And so there's that deep hole. There's that void, don't you think, that has not been filled properly.
Correct.
In the codependent person. And if it's both of them codependent, it's just asking for a big old mess, isn't it?
It is a really big mess when you have two codependent people get together. Yes.
Because it's like a competition in a way, and a neediness thing.
It is. It's very, it can.
They don't take turns being needy, right?
No, they do not take turns being needy. And we're talking about a relationship that usually has zero boundaries. And so,
Which not next week, but the next week we're going to talk about boundaries with codependency
Sure.
and how that really changes everything. And you can come out. The hope is people can, once they recognize what they're doing and these habits that they have and the way they're behaving, they can change it, can't they?
this absolutely can be changed, and it takes work to change it.
Right.
It's purposeful, it's intentional, but sure, we can change it.
Yeah.
And it starts with changing us on the inside and where our value comes from.
Right. So the bottom line, and let's go, we're running out of time here pretty quickly, but you go back to the person who's codependent. Let's say there's one person in a relationship and they're codependent. They have these needs that have never been met. Why? What's that? I know we mentioned childhood, but what in general is that? Is it?
Well, it's a lot of things that the needs could have come from, and that's just part of the issue, and that's part of working through healing it. Is kind of seeing what originally happened, because it's a lot of times it's something in childhood, but it could be something in our adulthood life too that can lead to this. But like we were talking, it's maybe feeling ignored, maybe feeling like your feelings don't matter or you don't matter to people who were significant to you in your life. Feeling like they're living in homes that doesn't have healthy boundaries.
Right.
That can definitely lead to this. Not feeling safe to be you. Like maybe
What if they won't like me if I let down and I let them know how I really feel about that?
For example, like I have known some people who've come from families who had very accomplished parents who were very, very successful, and they had to where they felt like in order to be valued, I had to be this level, and they couldn't be that level because that wasn't their natural gift and talent. So they felt like they had no value in themselves. So it's how we interpret the world around us. So it's not necessarily, I had this event, therefore I'm going to be codependent. It's not necessarily like that at all. A lot of times just feeling like, you're not enough, or having people in your life who aren't really trustworthy, getting betrayals early in life can definitely lead.
Bad marriages, being cheated on.
Yes.
Marrying the wrong person who really did not love you or care about you.
Absolutely. All of those types of things. Rejection, yeah.
Right.
Can be one of those things.
Yeah. So can we tell our audience how they can possibly see this in themselves or maybe somebody else in their relationships or whatever? What can be red flags for this? I guess that's what I'm trying to ask you.
Well, one big red flag for someone who's codependent is somebody who doesn't have healthy boundaries.
Okay.
So, for example, people who are constantly connected to their cell phone while they're out to lunch with you, right? Like that is usually a sign that we don't have healthy boundaries. People who break plans with you constantly are usually people who don't have healthy boundaries. So those boundary violations definitely are a huge flag that we could be looking at codependency. People who are always trying to be overly helpful.
Okay. Yeah.
They want to do this and do that and try to help you as much as they possibly can help you. And sometimes like people genuinely feel like there's times in life you need a little extra help. So you have this extra hands and it's very welcome. But then when you don't need that extra help, it becomes overbearing and that person starts getting very frustrated and angry because they're not feeling like they can be needed. People who don't give you space to make your own decisions and be your own you.
Right.
People you can't unplug from for long periods of times, a day or a couple of days, like that they constantly need you to plug into them.
So if you're dating somebody like this that is you suspect are codependent, some things you will see is they have to be texting you, they have to be talking to you all the time because otherwise they're worried that you've gone somewhere.
Right. They're worried that you don't love them or they're not enough or they've done something wrong. And so those are some big flags. Codependent people are people who they don't express their own feelings and needs and wants.
Right.
So when you're with somebody and they are always trying to blend in, like, oh, you pick where we eat. Oh, you do,
Sure.
Whatever you like to do. Let's do what you like to do. Like they're over accommodating.
Okay.
That definitely can be codependency in there.
Yeah.
And that's actually kind of really stressful when you've ever hung out with somebody who's never wants to
Oh yeah.
give an opinion or, make a request. Like
Yeah,
that
whatever
feels,
you think, whatever you think, that's
Yeah.
fine. Yeah, right. Um, yeah. Or if you're dating someone and they are totally controlling.
Sure. Because it can be on that other end of controlling. So it can go from becoming a martyr
Uh-huh.
to being overly controlling and
Right.
overly bearing. And that's why sometimes it's hard to differentiate where
Yes,
codependency
exactly.
is.
Yeah. Because sometimes people are just like, it's their way or the highway type thing.
Sure.
Right. But underneath all that, don't those controlling people a lot of times want to be acknowledged as I'm in charge and I accept that you're in charge or whatever the case may be.
Very
right?
much so. So it just depends on where we are in the codependency, the type of relationship it is, and how it's manifesting itself. And we need to throw this out there, but a lot of time when we have any kind of addiction, we have codependency.
Addictions, yes,
It goes hand
absolutely,
in hand.
yeah. Why does that go hand in hand?
Well, an addict needs a codependent to keep their addiction alive because codependency is about rescuing, right, and saving them from their own concept.
Yes, rescuing.
So,
yeah, exactly. Wow. So, let's say you're in a new relationship and you're the codependent person, and the other person is like wanting to really go slow, and you're feeling. Don't codependents like get all antsy about
yes,
that?
they do.
They can't handle that, can they?
That feels rejecting.
That's rejection, yeah. And so that's why these excessive texting, the insecurity, they don't really like me as much as I like them, that kind of thing.
And
right?
we'll see them do things like try to manipulate it. Oh, I got these tickets for this event, and can you go
Yeah,
with me tonight?
right,
I don't
yeah.
know. The person they come up with these scenarios that kind
Right,
of
right.
make someone feel almost guilty and
If they don't
guilted
go,
into going
yeah,
in with them.
right,
Mhm.
yeah. But aren't a lot of people that are the quote unquote victim of the codependent, like a lot of times that turns them off, that kind of planning everything, checking on them all the time, calling them, why haven't you called me? Doesn't that a person who's not codependent on the other side of that relationship, isn't that kind
It's
of
very much a turn off.
Isn't that a turn off? Like, oh, what's wrong?
Sure, if it's the other person has healthy boundaries, that's very much a
Right.
turn off
Yeah.
because it's very violating and overwhelming.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, because it's so out of balance. And and that's another huge thing. Like when we have these relationships out of balance,
Right.
a lot of times we have a codependency thing happening in that relationship when one person is, doing most of the giving and the other person's doing a lot of the taking.
So for anybody out there listening and it's thinking, maybe I'm codependent, I do a lot of those things. Take a look at that. And one of the best books out there, I think, is Codependent No More.
That's a great book.
Melody, what was her last name? Begins with B. But anyway, that was really a good book.
It is a very good book.
Because it points out some of this, and or therapy is really a good thing too.
Therapy is definitely a very good thing because it's going
So
to...
they can be helped, right?
It can totally be helped. This can be changed. It's learning about finding our true value. It's also learning about rewiring those tapes that tell us that I'm not valuable and I'm not lovable and I'm not worthwhile and unless I have complete control or unless I'm doing things for other people. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's about learning to be who you are and celebrate you,
and feeling confident with who I am.
And being okay if you're not dating someone or you're going through a period of time where you're kind of doing things by yourself. Get a hobby, do something.
Right, exactly. Like, confident, healthy people can have their alone time, they don't need anyone to approve their decision.
Right.
People pleasing is a huge sign of codependency.
People pleasing, absolutely huge.
And you're always looking for other people's validation of
Right.
what you're doing.
Right. That's a big clue.
A huge clue.
We're going to talk more about this coming up. Why is this important, Dr. Angel?
This is important because when we are in codependent relationships, first of all, we are in very unhealthy relationships. When we have codependent tendencies, we're miserable people and our emotions are constantly on this
up and
roller
down.
coaster.
Oh my gosh, yes, not an even keel.
From catastrophe to cloud 9 constantly. We're not moving forward in our life, we're stuck.
We're not focused. We're focused
No.
on people, on somebody meeting my needs, right?
Yes.
That's one of the biggest problems with codependency.
Absolutely.
Focused on somebody that will come in and meet my needs instead of me learning how to handle my problems.
Exactly. So exactly true. So we're not growing and developing as people. We're missing out on a lot of our life.
Yeah.
We're not enjoying life at all.
We're focusing on a person
Yes. We're
that
so
can
fixated.
fix me,
Mhm.
right? We're focusing on a person, a relationship that will make me feel better about myself.
Right. And we are so dependent on having that in order to have any positive feelings that we are really a slave to that relationship.
Yeah. Serious. Actually, this is very serious.
It is very serious.
You notice we haven't been, being silly very much tonight.
We
have not been real silly tonight.
Not
But I think part of that is because this is very serious.
It is very serious.
And I've seen it many years as a pastor with people, and I know that this can be improved in people's lives.
Totally can be.
It can.
But if it's not, it can be very destructive.
Devastating.
Yeah.
So you have 1 minute to sum up everything you just said.
Oh, wow. In 1 minute. I don't think I can do that. But
Okay.
I will say that codependency is about having that relationship and that gives you your value, that makes you feel like you have worth. And without these relationships, we don't have worth. And I'm here to tell you, you do have worth.
Yes.
Our worth is not in our relationship.
Yes.
Our worth is within who we are as a person.
That's right.
And a codependency roller coaster is just going to make us miserable. And so we can get through this and have healthy relationships.
We can. So you're going to want to stay tuned next week. And as we talk more about this subject, and as always, we encourage you to go to Dr. Angel's website, drangelsdevelopment.com. Check it out. If you need counseling, you can set an appointment right there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I
can.
can.
So, yeah. And the practice is growing and doing great. So check it out and join us again next week on Go Yard, where we will be here to talk about who knows what. No, this topic. That's what we're going to be talking about. All right. Anything else you'd like to say?
No. This has been Dr. Angel.
Oh, at least you remembered who you are tonight. That's something she's working on. And I'm Mama Mac, and we'll see you next week for Go Yard.
Good night.